Hello and welcome to the second clip in the Black Dog ride. In the last clip I rode through Creswick and I'm on the road to Daylesford now, which is the next major town on this route. Daylesford's in the health spa region of Victoria. It's I think a slightly bigger place than Creswick, but nevertheless a fairly small town. Or medium-sized town, I guess, and we're on the way to Creswick, and then from there we'll go to Ballarat and then on to Bannockburn, as I said. Now, in the last clip I talked about cornering techniques and things like that. I also mentioned the state of the road, and I think that's an important thing to comment on because it's one of those three factors that determines how safe your ride is going to be. The other factors being the rider or driver and the machine you drive and the machine that you're on. But the road is a pretty important factor, and we're pretty lucky here that this road seems to be pretty well maintained. It's got markings down the centre and markings on the edge and a pretty broad shoulder. And I think most of the roads that you go on throughout this ride are fairly well maintained. Some of the smaller country roads, there are some rough patches. The pack is well ahead of us here, but you should still be able to see the bloke in the orange vest who's the learner rider, as I said. And we're trying to keep them in sight, but give that guy plenty of room so we're not crowding him and not causing him to be uncomfortable by bikes getting too close to him at times when he's got to make decisions about changing direction or stopping or whatever. And as I mentioned in the last video, two people can ride abreast here or side by side. And if you're the guy on the inside or close to the edge of the road, you're often going to get caught with those broken shoulders and uneven patches and so on. And there was a long stretch of this ride where the fellow in front of me on the outside was pointing out uneven patches to me, and then I was pointing them out to the person behind me or anyone who was behind me. Now, I wanted to, since I'm in Victoria at the moment, I wanted to talk about something that's uniquely Victorian at the moment, and that is I'm not sure what the right word is, but kilometre usage tax that is about to be, or has been imposed on purchasers or drivers of EVs and plug-in EVs. And how this works is that the Victorian government has decided that if you own a fully electric vehicle, you should pay a tax of 2.6 cents per kilometre travelled per year based on a average drive of 15,000 kilometres a year. And if you drive a plug-in hybrid, you should pay a tax of 2 cents a kilometre. Now, they've made this argument based on the fact that people who drive electric vehicles or even plug-in hybrid vehicles or plug-in electric vehicles are avoiding fuel tax. And so they should pay another tax to make up for that. Now, this matter is before the High Court at the moment because the Commonwealth Government claims that only it has the power to levy such a tax, and various governments are intervening. The South Australian Government had a similar plan, but they abandoned their plan. The New South Wales Government has a plan to say that they will introduce a road user tax, is probably the best way to describe it, of similar measures when the motor vehicle fleet in New South Wales reaches 30% electric vehicles, or 2027, whichever comes the first. So I suspect that by 2027 we will be, or those people who drive and own electric vehicles will be paying a road user tax as well. Now, the argument, as I said, that's put forward here is that people who drive electric vehicles avoid fuel tax. I want to just go back a little bit and point out something first of all, that there are four factors probably that influence the take-up of electric vehicles in Australia or anywhere else. Number one is supply. Can you get one when you order one? When you go to the dealer's showroom and you say you want a Toyota Corolla hatch or something like that, they usually say, well, we've got one in stock, or we'll have one, it'll be 10 days and you'll have it. And that gives us time to deliver it, get it up here from wherever it is, whichever yard it's being held in, do all the pre-delivery business, and in 5 to 10 days it'll be yours. With most electric vehicles, the wait can be 3, 6, 12 or even longer months, and I think in the case of Tesla, they don't even tell you how long it is. They take your money and then one day they tell you your car is available. So supply is an issue. The other issues are price, range, how far can you go in your car, and charging stations, or availability of charging stations in the places where you want to go. Now, the range is certainly improving. but the price is still an issue, and a significant issue, and I'll come to that again in a moment. And the availability of charging stations is, of course, a significant issue. Mostly Australians travel about 33 kilometres a day, which often means they travel from their home to a park and ride place or something like that. But we do like to travel a long way on the weekends, and especially when we go on holidays. And so we want charging stations to be available, and we want them to be quick so that we're not standing around for hours charging the car. Coming back to the price for a moment, the NRMA, which is the motoring organisation in New South Wales, it's just reviewed 2 electric vehicles in its current magazine. One of those is the Kia EV6 GT, which sells for $99,590 plus on-road costs. So we're talking about $100,000 or more for that car. As an aside, whoever thought when Korean cars came onto the Australian market that we would be paying $100,000 for a Korean car? An electric vehicle to be sure, but nevertheless $100,000. The second vehicle they reviewed was the Audi e-tron GT, which retails somewhere between $180,200 and the spec that they had $274,650. Now, given that the median price of a car purchased in Australia is about $36,000, that is a Toyota Camry price, these 2 cars are way, way, way out of the median price range and way out of the price range of most people who might even think about buying an electric vehicle. But so to return to this tax business, in Australia, the Commonwealth Government levies what's called fuel excise, and it currently stands at about 45 cents a litre. So a litre of petrol in Australia is around $2. E10 is less, of course, and 98 is much more, but so the average price is about $2. So 45 cents, or nearly a quarter of the price, goes to the Commonwealth Government immediately. And they use that, they say, for roads and transportation infrastructure and so on. In New South Wales, the state government in the 90s added a 3 cents a litre levy on top of that, which was supposed to last 3 years and was never repealed and never will be, for the same purposes. So I'm assuming that in Victoria they have a similar feature. Now, when you buy a vehicle, of course you pay GST, that is a goods and services tax. In other countries it's called VAT or whatever it's called, but in Australia it's 10%. So take, for example, the Hyundai, or Hyundai, however you say it, Hyundai Kona. If you buy the fully electric vehicle, it's about $60,000. So that means about $6,000 of the price is GST. If you buy the similarly spec'd petrol version, it's about $35,000. So you are already paying $25,000 more in purchase price, but you are also paying $2,500 more in GST. Then you're paying more in GST on the registration of the vehicle, on the compulsory insurance and on the comprehensive insurance, and on just about everything else you buy for that car, including tyres, which you will buy more frequently because EVs tend to wear out their tyres more quickly because the torque is delivered straight away, and the tyres are more expensive. So, according to John Cadogan of the Auto Expert YouTube channel, it's going to take the EV owner something like 24 years of ownership of that vehicle before all of that extra tax and the $25,000 premium on the price has been worked off, if you like, or until he's at the same point in terms of savings as the person who bought the petrol-engined vehicle at $35,000. Now, obviously, 24 years, the owner of that vehicle is not going to be the person who paid the original purchase price, who originally bought the vehicle. It's probably not going to be going in 24 years, but even if it is, it's highly unlikely that the original owner is going to have the vehicle. But nevertheless, if you consider that as a factor, 24 years before you reach equilibrium with the petrol-driven version of the same car, that is a huge disincentive. Now, you might say that $2.6 cents per kilometre doesn't sound like much, but over 15,000 kilometres per year, plus the GST you've already paid when you purchased the car, plus the GST you paid on the compulsory insurance, plus the GST you paid on the registration, plus the GST you paid on the comprehensive insurance and all those parts like tyres and so on, I said, you're paying an awful lot more money in tax. Now, one of the things to consider about the GST is that all the money raised from that tax goes to the state governments. Now, it doesn't mean that every dollar raised in GST in Victoria goes to Victoria, but it means that every dollar of GST goes to the state governments to spend. And principally states are the level of jurisdiction or the jurisdiction that has the responsibility for roads. There are some roads that are considered major freight routes, for example, the Hume Highway between Sydney and Melbourne and the Pacific Highway between Sydney and Brisbane, and because lots of freight moves up and down both of those roads, they are considered major highways, and the Commonwealth Government does contribute to the upkeep and to the building, and that's why both of those highways are priorities for dual carriageway and divided carriageway with 2 lanes in each direction and so on. But then highways, motorways, whatever you want to call them, that are built within the state to move traffic in and around the cities, and other state roads are the responsibility of the state government. And as I said, it gets all this GST. And that doesn't mean all the GST is spent on roads, because there are other priorities such as schools, hospitals, etc. But there is an awful lot of money raised through the GST. Now, why does all this matter is that if we want people to take up electric vehicles in big numbers, we have to provide incentives. The reason we're concerned about that is because although transport overall, that is land, sea and air transport, constitutes something like 18% of our emissions, 60% of that 18% comes from light vehicles. That is the cars that you and I drive, or the motorcycles that you and I drive in and around our cities. And if we're going to be serious about reaching carbon emissions targets, then we need to do something about emissions that come out of tailpipes of cars. And since most of those are driven in congested cities, the one big benefit, as well as being better for the environment, of course, will be that the air in our cities will be cleaner, and that will be healthier for the people who live in those cities, because it's well known that the health costs of bad air are significant, and it's alleged by some that the health costs are a greater contributor to death than most, in fact, all other diseases. So if we want people to take up EVs, we've either got to have a negative impact in terms of prices, or we've got to provide incentives. Reductions in sales, reductions in stamp duties and cashbacks and so on aren't going to cut it if the difference is going to take 24 years to amortise, and at that level it's going to be a huge disincentive. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you've been a bit more informed about EVs. I hope you've enjoyed the scenery and the ride, and I'll catch up with you again when I'm talking about the third clip of this motorcycle ride.